Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to look really closely at a truly universal human experience. I mean, it's something every single one of us has gone through at some point. I am talking, of course, about physical suffering. You know, the sharp, annoying sting of a paper cut, or maybe that dull, dragging ache in your lower back. We spend an absolutely incredible amount of time, energy, and let's be real, money trying to avoid it. And yet it remains so deeply mysterious. We normally just treat it as a simple fact of life, right? A basic, unavoidable reality. But what if the way we've been thinking about it is fundamentally flawed? What if the actual science is pointing us in a totally different direction? So settle in, get comfortable, and let's unravel this whole thing together.
Okay, so think back to the last time you utterly smashed your toe into a piece of furniture, or maybe burned your finger on a hot stove. In that exact agonizing second, where did you actually feel the pain? The answer seems completely obvious, right? In your toe, or in your finger. But I want to kick things off here with a question that might actually challenge your most basic assumptions about your very own body. Does pain truly exist in that injured body part, or is it entirely constructed in the mind? It's a pretty heavy question, I know. And honestly, it's exactly the question at the heart of the amazing source material we're deconstructing today.
All right, let's dive right into this. Our entire focus for today's explainer revolves around a really groundbreaking book called The Brain and Pain, written by Richard Ambron. As we translate and deconstruct this work, we're going to use its core concepts as a kind of roadmap for our whole journey today. The ideas inside are just so foundational, they literally guide you into a completely new way of thinking about human biology. Honestly, it's almost like examining a complex, three-dimensional hologram of the mind itself.
Let's start right at the core concept, which is the title itself. In Arabic, it translates directly to the brain and pain. Notice how just jamming those two words right next to each other immediately forces you to rethink things. We usually associate pain strictly with the point of injury, right? The knee, the back, the skin. But by placing the brain first, literally right next to pain, the author is explicitly linking a physical, biological organ with what is essentially an invisible, subjective experience. He's telling us right out of the gate, you cannot understand the pain without deeply understanding the brain. The pain isn't just sitting there in your body, it's anchored right up there in your skull. To really wrap our heads around what this book is doing, we've got to ground ourselves in the precise scientific lens the author is actually using. We're looking at all of this through the lens of neuroscience. For a quick refresher, this is the scientific study of the nervous system, aiming to understand the biological basis of behavior and perception. And actually scratch that. Focus on that last word, perception. That is absolutely the key here. Neuroscience isn't just about staring at cells under a microscope. It's actively attempting to map out how those tiny cells somehow create the conscious reality we feel and perceive every single second of our waking lives.
And honestly, this concept is just brilliantly captured if you imagine your brain's neural activity as these glowing pink and white nodes, just bright, rapid flashes of light scattering across a vast, intricate network, because that is the reality of your central nervous system. It's a constant storm of electrical and chemical signaling firing off in real time. It takes that totally invisible perception we just talked about and makes it vividly real, showing us that the brain is practically electric when it's busy processing an experience.
Which brings us to an absolutely massive contrast. See, the traditional view of physical distress, the way almost all of us grew up being taught to think, is that pain is strictly a localized body issue. You cut your hand, so your hand hurts, period. Under this view, the brain is just this passive receiver, kind of like a blank monitor just displaying a live security camera feed from the hand. But the neuroscience view, which is championed by this source, suggests something entirely different. It defines pain as a highly complex neural event. It tells us the brain is actually an active electric sensing center. It's taking in signals, interpreting them, rapidly cross-referencing them with your past memories and current emotions, and then it consciously constructs the feeling of pain.
Now, the author declares something absolutely huge right out of the gate. The subtitle claims it's a paradigm shift in neuroscience. That is the core promise of the book. And honestly, that is an incredibly bold statement to make. The author isn't just saying, hey, I've got a few new fun facts to squeeze into the next medical textbook. No way. He's laying down a gravity-shifting thesis for the entire scientific community and for us as readers. He's promising that the stuff contained within these pages will literally change the foundational baseline of how we approach human biology.
So what does a paradigm shift actually mean in this context? Because understanding the sheer weight of that phrase is crucial. A paradigm shift is a fundamental change in the basic concepts and experimental practices of a whole scientific discipline. It's what happens when the old rules simply no longer apply. By using that exact term, the author is emphasizing that we are completely overturning our foundational understanding of suffering. We're moving from treating pain purely mechanically, like, just patching a broken pipe, to treating it neurologically. It fundamentally changes how doctors approach patients, and it absolutely changes how we view our own daily discomfort.
Bringing this level of hardcore cutting-edge science across language barriers is no joke. It takes immense collaboration. It requires not just the brilliant author Richard Ambron, but dedicated experts like the translator Dr. Iman Maarouf and the team at Takween Publishing. Capturing scientific nuance accurately in another language is notoriously difficult, so acknowledging the translator really establishes the credibility and the intense care put into this specific edition. It takes a completely dedicated team, rigorously studying and interpreting every word to bring this kind of intellectual depth to a totally new audience.
Now, what's genuinely fascinating here is the specific series this book belongs to. It's part of a series dedicated to inquiries, or questions, and that entirely frames the context of the work. This isn't meant to be some dry, boring recital of biological facts that you just passively consume. It is fundamentally designed to provoke deep, probing questioning. It's essentially an invitation to the reader. Don't just accept the information. Inquire about it, challenge it, and actively participate in this ongoing scientific dialogue.
So when we synthesize all of this, the bold juxtaposition of the title words, the electric, hyperactive concept of the brain, the massive promise of a true paradigm shift, and that open invitation to inquire, you realize you aren't just opening a book. You are stepping into a completely new universe of understanding. It prepares you to finally abandon those old, localized ideas of physical suffering and step into a vast, complex, neurological space where your own mind is the ultimate architect of your daily experience. And that brings us to the real so what of it all. We've deconstructed the science and the core message presented in this incredible work, but, knowledge is only as good as how you apply it. So here's the thought I really want to leave you with today. If pain is indeed a complex neural event, an active, literal construction in the brain that we can practically visualize firing off, how does this scientific shift fundamentally change your own relationship with suffering? The next time you feel physical distress, are you going to just focus on the injury itself, or are you going to stop and think about your brain working overtime in the background? It is a fascinating paradigm shift, for sure, and the real deep answers are waiting for you inside the actual pages of the book. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions and keep learning.